Well, finding the characters, I mean, finding people is what I do. That's my background. I've worked in documentaries for a long time, and in a way it's one of the things I love most about my job. How I go about finding them, in a sense, there's a process. It's quite an organic process in that I suppose we started by identifying some areas that were of interest to us, and we were very keen to look at a very wide spectrum of risk takers. So sort of early meetings threw up ideas like, oh, I don't know, base jumpers. Do we need a big wave surfer? Do we need a and then out of those conversations, a rather more eclectic list came together of the sorts of people we might look for, and then I read around the subject as much as I can. I talk to quite a lot of people. I try and make contact with people working in those areas and talk to them on the phone, and then you end up with, as it were, a kind of pot of stories. And there are so many wonderful, rich stories around them. I mean, we were spoilt for choice, really. You could have written a much longer book with many, many more chapters, really. But then there comes a day when you're like, OK, let's go and do this. And you pick people. And there's something lovely that happens at that point where you go, OK, we're not just going for any old Paralympian, say. We're going for Kelly Gallagher. She's a visually impaired downhill skier. So it's when you really get into the specifics of a particular character, the unique things that make that one person tick, that's when a story really begins to sing. And while you might be able to look at some of those bigger, grander, more general ideas about risk, if you're looking at them through the prism of a single character, I think that's, for me, when the project really came alive. In terms of how my approaches were received when I got in contact with these people, it was fascinating, actually, in that, to a very large extent, we were pushing on an open door here. And I think that is because all of these people get approached by the press for this and that, and are sometimes invited to discuss some issues that relate to risk. But because of the way that risk is so widely and commonly dealt with in the media, I think they're used to that discussion of risk as being a negative thing. And so they were very interested by, and I think they were intrigued by a project that wanted to was interested in the other side of living with risk every day. So, I mean, let me give you a sort of specific example. So, the chap who works for the Red Cross, Christian Schuh, he'd be used to having journalists sort of fish for the worst case scenario stories, the time it went wrong, the time, let's talk about kidnappings, let's talk about explosions. Or it might be the ballerina. She might have been used to people saying, oh, well, tell me about the ballet dancer, the anorexic ballet dancer who cracked up and it all fell to pieces. And they were all very drawn to the opportunity to talk about their relationship with risk through the glass of something that was less interested in the sensational, and less interested in, or more interested in, the positive things that might be derived from risk. So I think it was quite a surprising approach, and one that they all seemed to be quite sort of refreshed to be asked to talk about it from that angle, I suppose.